Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Hopefully you are enjoying your day. You are watching Christ Centered Conscious Culture. And my name is Melanie, prophet and daughter of I Am That I Am. And you guys, I am back with another wilderness season series. I've been saying it so much I'll be getting tongue tied, but I'm back with another video. God, for you guys that don't know, that may be new to the channel, God has me on a wilderness season series where He's pretty much brought me out of darkness, brought me out of being in the world, brought me out of being in sin, and has brought me back to Him again. And He's been unctioning me to pretty much just be open with my testimony and sharing my experience within the duration of my entire wilderness season. So currently, right now, I'm in more of like a transitional space. I'm not yet in my promised land, but I'm no longer in the wilderness that I was in. So pretty much today is going to be part 5. He's been giving me a mind to do it in parts. So if you haven't watched parts 1 through 4, and I have them all broken up, like 1 is the longest, 2A, 2B. Like I said, I've tried to be very mindful of and I'm just looking at my notes here because I want to make sure that I stay on topic and get right to the point. But like I said, He just has me on this this journey in regards to just kind of like expressing myself regarding the testimonies of just what I've been through within this wilderness season. I say it in almost every video, and I'm going to continue to say it. This is not a custom for me to just get on a public worldwide platform and pretty much talk about my personal life in this particular in depth. But nevertheless, like I said, when it comes to kingdom work, it's not about me, and I don't have any business when it comes to kingdom work. So part 5, getting right into it, is suffering, pain, loss, and major warfare. So like I said, this has definitely been a very trying journey. Definitely not for the weak, definitely not for the faint of heart. I have really been through a lot, and honestly, it's been kind of like, a lot to kind of hear. It's been a lot to kind of like hear, but then also been like to hear me go through these different things and be kind of like, I know that I've experienced it, but then for me to actually verbalize it, you know what I'm saying? So it's been like a lot to kind of hear myself, say these things. But I'm getting right into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about, because that's really kind of where it started from, is job loss. So I was unctioned by God on July 11th of 2025 to actually quit my job. And during that time, I was working as a CPS social worker. If you want details on all of that, you need to listen to part 1. And I have timestamps on it at the 40-minute mark. It pretty much talks about the warfare that I was dealing with. And then part 2 leads right into the continuation of that warfare. If you want to kind of know exactly about the role, how long I was in it, and some of the things that I entailed being in that role. So God had begun to deal with me. Like I said, I talked about the dark night of the soul, and I talked about spiritual awakening. So He had begun to deal with me in dreams, giving me revelations, giving me downloads, just giving me so much insight about me not just being called, but also being chosen, and how He was going to use me in these last and latter time, in these days, pretty much. But I'll just say, we're getting to, how people talk about, the last days and stuff like that. And clearly, this message is not about that today. But like I said, He was letting me know that I had been more than just called, but I've also been chosen. And granted, when you hear things like that, I know for me, I didn't really know what to make of all of that, But when I tell you the weight of that thing and the cost, it has been something else that I cannot have prepared myself for. But it was on my spirit today, the song, I'm Still Here, you know what I'm saying? And truly, by His, kept by mercy and grace, I'm still here, And I know one thing I can say, and I'm kind of like, jumping ahead, but I think it's fitting. One thing I've learned throughout the duration of this time, and it's been a little over 9 months that I've been in this space. A lot of times, I know with me, I just felt like, even when I was like a babe in Christ, I would hate to go through things. I felt like, okay, I'm saved now, why do I have to go through different things, I was already going through stuff in the world. Why do I have to, be saved, rededicate my life, and I still have to go through things? But as you mature in God. And like I said, I've been, in the backslidden state prior to this, prior to 9 months or so. He's brought me back now, and I'm sanctified and cleaned up and right standing with God again. To God be the glory. but he's let me know that, not only will he bring you through things, he will bring you to them and bring you through them. But a lot of times we think that, I know I'll say me, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm sure other people can relate. We're not going to just be omitted to, not go through things, because the word even talks about that, he talked about pretty much. He pretty much talks about, I thought I heard something, y'all. Like, I'm outside. I'm always pretty much in nature when I'm recording. So I was like, hold up, what's that? But he pretty much talks about, that he, be encouraged because he's overcome the world, And I don't have I didn't write down any particular scriptures. I'm just going, off of memory. But he pretty much, talked about, trouble not lasting always, but also, count it all joy when you fall in diverse temptations, all of these different things, you know what I'm saying? He lets us know, that we could do all things through Christ Jesus. So it's not that he's giving us all these scriptures just to say something or just to have a soundbite. We have to endure being in the will of God, being in the body of Christ. And a lot of times we have to mature, or we're really kind of ignorant to the fact of knowing that if Jesus, the only begotten Son of the Father, had to go through, and he went through guiltless, he went through without fault of any of his own, bearing the sins of us, that we may live and have a true advocate to the Father. You know what I'm saying? If he had to go through and suffer sins that he didn't even do, what do we think we're going to have to do when we have dipped and dabbed and enjoyed the pleasures of sin? Even though sin leads to death, we have had times that we've enjoyed sin, in ignorance, being blind, having strongholds and all of that. And it's not a punishment, it's a part of the process. And that's what I'll say I'm learning. So some of these things that I'm talking about today, a lot of my family don't even know, that I've been through this. I haven't really talked to a lot of people. I would say, I can count on one hand, and I probably won't even get to the third finger or the fourth finger of people that really, truly know all the entails and details of everything, because God has unctioned me to, be quiet with some things, and he's also unctioned me to share some things. So I have to be very, mindful of being still in God's presence to know what he want me to do and how he want me to say it. And like I said, it's been something else, because I felt like, in my understanding, I'm like, well, Lord, how do you want me to talk about testimonies and sharing my wilderness seasons when you have not fully brought me out yet? And I'm learning more and more, looking through, the book of Joshua, counting the stones. This is a part of counting the stones for a memorial of where I've been in God and where he's going to bring me to, and how he's continuing to bring me through. So without further ado, I'm going to be obedient. So job loss, July 11, 2025. He gave me a mind to quit my job. I was going through a lot of warfare at that time, but I also was going through the initial stages of my spiritual awakening and God restoring me back to him. So it was just a lot of things that I was going through in that period of time. So from July to, I would say, all the way, up until that time, I paid my rent. I never forget that I paid my rent and handled business and stuff like that. And I did not have another job lined up after that. I didn't have a plan B. I was literally walking and listening to the Lord. So as you can think, a person, I have been, stable for years. I'm not going to say I've never been through things. I've lived with people more than one time, more than times that I would like to have had to stay with people. But that's life. Things happen, right? So I've had a level of stability for a while, and I'm like, okay, I really wasn't initially worried about it, because I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe he's just gonna, put me, somewhere else. Maybe I'm gonna, go work for somebody else or work for another company, or I didn't know what he was doing. You know what I'm saying? I just know at that time I was exhausted. For for you guys that don't know, I'm also a widow. I also talk about that within the Wilderness series. So if you haven't got any of the details, or if you're wanting to kind of know a little bit more information, definitely make sure you check out all the different series, because he has me uploading this for a reason. I don't even know all of the reasons as we speak, but I do know it's for a purpose. And so within that time frame, I just began to, be with the Lord. So I had time, had more time on my hand, because again, I wasn't working. So within that time, the Lord allowed me to get a dog, and I still have my dog. Thank God, praise God for my mom, because she has been a big help, throughout the process. But I end up, saying, okay, I'm gonna just lean into this process, So I had been wanting a dog for a while anyway, especially after losing my husband. I had, been thinking about it off and on, but then I finally said, okay, well, my work schedule is not all over the place now, so end up doing that. So I'm just saying, I just kind of leaned into, okay, I'm not working. What's next? I didn't know. So did that, got a dog, and just started living my life. And God would begin to deal with me. And like I said, I was going through a lot of purging, I was going through a lot of crying, I was going through doing a lot of shadow work, just a lot of shadow work. So he was just spiritually just building me up, and breaking down strongholds. Like I said, even for the times that I was smoking marijuana for the moment, he had took that off of me. And as a result, I'll never forget, this is one of the things, as it comes from suffering, pain, loss, and major warfare in part 5, the day before I threw my last blunt away. And like I said, I could have smoked it because I was kind of battling, like, why am I out again and smoked blunt? Because, this is going to be the last one. But like I said, God had been dealing with me so much in the spirit of love and just forgiveness that I felt like, I am, disappointed my father, what I'm saying? So he just began to overwhelm me with just an overwhelming amount of love, what I'm saying? And I just felt like, I'm not even going to do that. I'm just, I just was tired of my old ways, what I'm saying? So I threw it in the trash, and I'll never forget, I went out on my way, about to walk my dog, and I went into, I'm not even going to, well, I can say it, because I went into Walmart. And I said, well, let me get in and get something to eat. Normally, I never do. I normally like to kind of like, if I'm going to do a walk or any type of workout, I don't like to eat real heavy before I walk or do any type of workout. So I just wanted to get something light before we did our walk, right? So literally had my dog in the car. And this is months into it. So about this time, I had been, like I said, been purging, talking to the Lord, being at the Lord's feet, what I'm saying, just kind of faith walking and just really not knowing what to expect. But I know he had been maintaining me. So for those who don't know, like I said, I was in my apartment 5 months after the time, like 5 months of not paying rent. Mind you, I talked to, my property manager. I made them aware, let them know what was going on, just sort out, the regular things that you would do, try to get additional resources and all of that. So I pretty much got to a place I exhausted all of my resources, so I was in that space of just kind of waiting to see what, things that can kind of like work with me. I even applied. I was even inquiring about working for the my apartment complex, because like I said, I didn't know what to do. And I was like, Lord, I only can do, I'm a social worker. At the end of the day, I'm going to look for resources and opportunities and link those things like I would do for my clients, linking for myself, So I'm providing linkage to myself, and I'm one, like I said, I'm a problem solver. I'm solution oriented to my heart, not only professionally, but personally as well, So I was in that space. So just the kind of span of time, like I said, I quit the job in July. I had been in my apartment for like 5 months after the time that it was supposed to be. So that kind of brought me a little bit of solace and a little bit of comfortability, because I'm like, okay, I know I ain't losing my mind, Lord. You tell me to quit my job, but I don't have anything else to fall back on. You know what I'm saying? That it wasn't like I had any savings that I can really like live off for a long period of time, really didn't have anything, So I was just kind of like, oh my goodness. And then months is going by. So about this time, this is around, like I say, November, because I want to say this was before was it after Thanksgiving? It was around that time. I just know it was in November. I don't know if it was before or after. Matter of fact, yeah, I don't know if it was before or after Thanksgiving, but I know it was in the month of November. And matter of fact, I think it was before Thanksgiving. So anyway, about to walk my dog, stop off to get a little snack, and then I go into Walmart and had an altercation with a young lady at the actual hot bar. And when I tell you, one thing escalated to another. And by this time, like I said, when you are in a wilderness season, you're already, well, I can speak for me, I was already dealing with just, God giving me manna, just enough to make it. When I'm used to having my own control, used to having my own say, used to having my own free will to get what I want, when I want, how much I want it, I was stripped of all of that. And that right there was crushing. So I was going through a crushing, a pressing in the spirit. And how many know that's how that oil comes out? Just think about olive oil. You talk about, you got cold press olive oil and different types of presses, but the presses produces different things, right? So I just want you to keep that in mind. So I was already in that space, month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, so I'm just like, having conflicted thoughts, not knowing what to do, really can't really talk to family members like that. I've tried to reach out, for assistance, to see if, anyone could just allow me to lend something. But at the same time, people look, it's almost like, Lord, I can't go to people, but like, the Lord told me to quit my job. You got some money I can borrow? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, I'm gonna need you to reconsider that. Like, if the Lord told you to do it, you know what I'm saying? So it just was not logical. So all of my people that struggle with just looking from a space and looking at things and God from a logical standpoint, it'll mess you up. And when I say mess you up, it can have your mind and your thoughts really be triggering, you know what I'm saying? And then warfare can really become even in the mind. I'm telling you, I've been there, done that, because I was just kind of fighting like, this is logically not making sense. But God doesn't work and operate only within the logic realm. He's a spiritual God, you know what I'm saying? And those that serve him and seek him must, pretty much worship him in spirit and truth. That's what's coming to my spirit. But even serving God, you can't just go with him logic. He's unorthodox. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. You know what I'm saying? And I knew that he told me to quit. And like I said, I had the evidence that I was still there. I was still in communication with my property managers. I was just really trying to be responsible about it. I didn't want to just be like, dodging, but at the same time, it didn't feel good. So long story short, get into an altercation with the young lady. Mind you, she's like 15 years my senior. Now, how do I know all of this? Because we got into a verbal altercation at the hot bar. Ended it. Staff got involved. It was like a little scene and stuff like that. I walked off. She stepped out. You know what I'm saying? She walked off. I'm going to the cash register on my way to check out. And something told me just to turn around. Just to turn around. Just something told me to. And this girl comes up walking straight up on me. And she had already let me know when we had the verbal conversation, like, look, this is my last day, da 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 da. Yeah, it was definitely before Thanksgiving, because I think that was like, holiday seasons and stuff. So I'm like, clearly I can tell, because she was so rude and so nasty. Like, 'cause I'm not going to all the details of all that unless God permits, and I want to keep these videos at a certain amount of time. So homegirl walked straight up on me. Now, mind you, I got some heat on me, honey. I've been already in the thickets in my wilderness season. I didn't look like it, you know what I'm saying? But oh my gosh, was I feeling it, you know what I'm saying? So homegirl goes and she throw one at me. She actually threw a punch in my face, and before I knew it, I blacked out. Like I said, and I'm not, like I said, when it comes to fighting and all that stuff, I'm really a person, I'd rather talk through something. I'm not always a physical person, you know what I'm saying? And God had to teach me, even in the wilderness and stuff like that, about my rage. And I had went through a period in my life too that I just did not like to fight, when I was younger. And God had to let me know that I was afraid of my own rage, because I was abused, you know what I'm saying? I, went through a lot of physical abuse, in my childhood and stuff like that. And I also, dealt with just different environments, just erratic, emotional changes where I had to learn how to adapt, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of kept me, a little off kilter, and I was always assessing my environment, always assessing my mood. And when I say abuse, I'm talking about, some people would call it abuse nowadays. Old school wouldn't call it, extension cords, beating with brooms, all that stuff, type of stuff. Back in the old days, that's what they did. It wasn't abuse, it was discipline, you know what I'm saying? But nowadays, like I said, you don't know the ramifications of those things until you get older. So I had a level of rage that was in me that if I got to a certain point, I would just go off. But I didn't have the words for that when I was younger. You know what I'm saying? I just knew that I had like a fear of seeing myself get really angry, because it got me to a place where I was not in control, and I did not like to feel not in control of my emotions, because I saw what that looked like. My mom was very emotional, you know what I'm saying? And she, had her, like I said, some things are just generational, I'll say that, right? So I'm giving you a little backstory. Didn't even plan on saying that, but like I said, to God be the glory. You know what I'm saying? So long story short, before I knew it, I blacked out. And I didn't know, like, by the time I had actually gathered myself and came to, I was like, I saw her on the ground, and I know she had like a ombre like wig color, like a purple wig on and stuff like that. When I saw it, then I saw her just with straight backs when I got up, and then I didn't see nothing really of her face. So mind you, at that point, I'm just trying to get myself together, and then I'm just like, oh dag, my pouch, my money, because I had my pouch, because like I said, I was gonna walk my dog, and I try to bring like treats and all that stuff. So I try to have something on me that does not going to weigh me down, but I can still access, dog bags and all that stuff. So I had my last little bit of money. I think I had like $60 on me, and I had my ID and all that stuff. Homegirl stole my money, threw my ID away, and mind you, we got all this stuff on the camera. So I let them know that I wanted to press charges, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, this is crazy. And I knew, I'm telling you, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was warfare, because just the night before, I actually had put that blunt in the trash, and the enemy was mad. Do you hear me? And how many it's easy to get in sin. It don't seem like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, you know what I'm saying? You really don't always see the immediate consequences. But when you try to come out, and like I said, the parallel analogy I use is almost like getting into a pool. When you first get into a pool, you light, you flow, you airy, you go in with the flow. But it's when you're trying to get up out of those waters, that's when you feel the weight and the tug of strongholds, you know what I'm saying? So it was one of those things. I automatically knew that it was warfare. Now, even with me being saved in the past and stuff like that, I never knew warfare like I have known warfare in this season. So yeah, I blacked out, and by the time the cops came and all, I literally had my dog, so I ended up having to take my dog home and stuff like that, because it was just too much. And I come back in, and the guy was like, oh, I know who you are. I'm like, what? So mind you, they have all this stuff on camera, and they was like, I was really trying to figure out what happened. Like I said, I blacked out, did not remember anything. You know what I'm saying? That fight flight mode, you know what I'm saying? So they was like, and the lady was kind of like looking at me like, you don't know what you did to her? And I'm like, no, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So long story short, she was just giving me descriptions. I'm not going to go into all the details of all that stuff, but she was giving me the descriptions of her injuries and stuff like that. And I don't even know if you can see it. I got like a still little, this is back from November. It's kind of like, healing, you know what I'm saying? But even that scar, that's where that scar came from. I didn't have that on my face prior to November, you know what I'm saying? It came from getting into an assault with a girl 15 years younger than me. And that's a whole nother conversation too, because I just was like, the generation nowadays is in a whole different realm. They just made from a different cloth, straight up. I'm serious, because I would never have put my hands on an older person, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like the lack of respect is crazy. And I'm not going to go into details about that, but that was another situation. Then after that, it got to a place that next month I got evicted from my place. So after being there for 5 months, time came up. And the thing about it, I hated the way they did it, because it was almost like, that I've been talking to you, I've been in communication with your boss, and even some of the actual maintenance people, and some of the staff that was there. And they came and had the sheriff knocking on my door like I was a criminal. You would have thought I was selling dope out of my apartment. I'm telling you, the way he knocked on my door. And I had to let him know, like, yo, listen, don't knock on my door like that. I know you got your paperwork, and it says that I owe, and I do owe. But I went to court and I did all the necessary things that I needed to do, and just let them know I was in a situation, so neither here, he was just serving the papers and all that stuff, and he didn't really want to hear that. But like I said, it was to the point I was like, yo, listen, I need to talk to your supervisor, you know what I'm saying? Because like I said, people treat you any type of way, but really don't know the whole story. And like I said, I get that, you know what I'm saying? Having my background in social work, you see people's files and see people's, you know what I'm saying? You see their files and their background and all that before you even meet them. But there's always another side of the story. Not to say, everybody's right, and not to say I was right for not paying rent, but I was acknowledging that. It wasn't like I was lying about it, you know what I'm saying? So got evicted in December. Had to move in with my mom's. And this was a little bit probably like a week before Christmas. So imagine being on your own, doing your own thing, paying your own bills. Come on. You know what I'm saying? Like well over 40, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, well over 40, I'm 43 now, right? But, it was just like, come on, like I had been on my own for a while, you know what I'm saying? I even moved out of my house, my mom's house, when I was in high school, 12th grade year. And again, have stayed with people throughout the duration of that time. But I'm saying all to say, I had a form of stability, and a record of being stable more so than I was not, you know what I'm saying? So it was very, very humbling. So by this time, like I said, it was just a lot for me to kind of take in. So I'm like, Lord, why in the world would you allow me to quit my job if you know you wasn't going to have anything else set for me to do? to be able to pick up the pieces and make sure I'm landing on my feet and still be able to take care of myself. So I mean, all bills is behind at this point. To the point, like I said, I was just trying to call and work things out, and I'm looking at my notes because I'm gonna just, try not to make this long, But yeah, so I end up having to stay with my mom. My mom also had a family member staying with her, and this family member, had some issues and stuff like that, which I already knew prior to. I never really even went in my mom's house like that because of the family members' issues and stuff like that, and me not trying to, like I said, I'm a very laid back person. I'm very cool, but my anger ain't no joke. You know what I'm saying? And I don't underestimate my anger, and I don't underestimate anybody else's anger. And I'm to the point where I can take a lot, but when you push me to a point, you coming at me in a very disrespectful. I'm real big on respect. You know what I'm saying? And if you disrespect me in a way, you're going to see another side to me. You know what I'm saying? It ain't like I'm the biggest, the baddest person or nothing like that, but I'm going to defend myself, and I'm going to let you know to step back or step off or calm down or do something. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have a problem using my voice. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. So I already knew that I had to kind of like tread lightly because this is not my house. You know what I'm saying? So that was a whole ordeal. I thank God for my mom opening up her doors for me, but at the same time, it wasn't mine. You know what I'm saying? And you already know when you get to be a certain age, I don't care, woman, do whatever. You do your own thing the way you do your own thing, and you pay for that. And I was one of the people, I didn't mind that. Like, I like to be able to, pay my way so I can do what I want to do, how I want to do it. You know what I'm saying? So it was very humbling, you know what I'm saying? So by this time, I was just almost like low-key angry with God, like, what in the world? What is going on with my life? Here it is, you told me to quit my job. I done did that. And then there was a duration of time that I didn't have heat in the wintertime, and even got resources to pay for that. And that was a process in the line, trying to get that done. And I humbled myself. You know what I'm saying? I had to do what I had to do. At the end of the day, like I said, I grew up in the hood, urban city, whatever way you want to call it. So I had a level of survival already in me. And it was always those things, even though at one point I was making close to six figures, I always had a hustle. I always had what you call a mentality, you know what I'm saying, to work for what you have. You know what I'm saying? I grew up with people, if you don't work for what you have, you don't have nothing. Even in the word talks about if you don't work, you don't eat. So I didn't have a problem with that. I grew up with people in an environment that they found ways to hustle to do what they had to do, whether it was legal or not. You know what I'm saying? You found a way to, and I'm not promoting nothing illegal or anything like that, but I'm just saying the facts around me. You know what I'm saying? Just grew up with people making sure that you take opportunities to better yourself. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody did the right way, but at the end of the day, you got to eat. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I'm not trying to promote anything negative or anything like that. It's just the principle of, you know what I'm saying, being a person that was willing to do what I needed to do to go out and make things happen for myself. That's pretty much what I'm saying. So by that time, I was there, and things was definitely tight in regards to like how I did stuff, how this family member rolled, how I was used to being, what I was used to being around, what I wasn't used to being around. So it was just a very kind of like, tight situation, and then the living arrangements wasn't the best, but it was better than being on the street. So I was grateful for that. And I just was like, I had a level of sorrow. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm back with my mom. So I stayed there for about a month. That ended bad because me and the family member got into an altercation. We almost got physical, you know what I'm saying? But it resulted in the family member spitting in my face. I am 43 as of March, as of last month. Ain't nobody ever spit in my face before in my whole entire life. And again, like I said, that rage and that frustration, I went off. I literally, my thoughts was, mind you, like, I'm like, you dumb, and you know what I wanted to say. Because I'm like, you stay, I know where you stay. We stay in the same place at this point. So my mind was to boil some water. And while this person was sleeping, I was going to dip some, just kind of thrust some water on their lips. So every time they looked at their lips, they will remember when they put their lips together to spit on my face. And when I tell you I was so serious about that, I was so serious, and God took me right up out of there. And like I said, by this time, lost my husband, lost my place, got into altercation, just humiliated on the way leaving, being evicted, humiliated. I went through that, like I said, the episode of not having heat, even after getting resources, and the maintenance people couldn't fix it, and there was an issue, had to wait for parts in a cold part. I mean, it was like, yo, these circumstances do not equate to me just being irresponsible. You know what I'm saying? It was like, Lord, you told me to do this. I did what you told me to do. I was being obedient, and this is what I get. This is really what I get. And it was to the point I was just like done. So by that time, after that situation had occurred, there was no way that I can live in that space, because either that person was going to hurt me or I was going to hurt. And that person, like, threatened to take my life. And like I said, I've already, have had, somebody to try to take my life before. So that's not words for me that sit easy. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I don't take nothing for granted, and I don't play with certain words. I don't care if you family member or not. I don't take those words lightly, So I knew that I couldn't stay there anymore. You know what I'm saying? And I had got to the place, and I don't know if people can relate, but it's a scary thing for me to get to a place where I don't give a what, you know what I'm saying? And when I don't care anymore. And I felt like I was in that space, because I really did not feel like I cared whether I lived or died. And I verbalized that even to the police. They was like, oh, don't say that. I was like, no, for real, for real. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I had dealt with so many things, and I was coming from like living in the suburbs area, and then like on the outskirts a little bit of the space that I was living in. And then my mom lived a little bit more on the city side, you know what I'm saying? So it was just a lot. But then the Lord allowed me to reach out to another family member, and I ended up relocating and moving completely out of state, completely out of the city and stuff like that. And then I had dealt with, just more warfare and just a lot of like rearranging when it comes to like my living arrangements. And then, like I said, this particular family member, they had a particular business. So I had to understand, the ins and out of that. And I did understand the ins and out of it. But there were so many other things that was just like unknown. And I was kind of like, I hadn't been, around this particular family in a while, you know what I'm saying? Like in their dwellings and stuff like that. Like how do you can know family and stuff like that, but when you're not around them, you really don't know them like you think you know them. You know what I'm saying? So look at that. I got a ladybug. I got a ladybug on me. Normally I'd be freaking out. I'm doing good today. I don't want to kill it, but you're going to have to get off me. Hold on. All right. But yeah, so it was just one of those things, right? And, so like I said, I just adapted. One thing about me I've learned in this life, you have to be adaptable. Not only, like I said, professional. These are values that are transferable within my professional career, but I also value them in my personal life. So, like I said, I just pretty much was just dealing with so much physical, emotional, I'm looking at my notes here too, financial and spiritual exhaustion. You know what I'm saying? So some of the warfare, I could talk about that. It came in those forms, those intrusive thoughts, those thoughts that, oh, you dumb, oh, you stupid, who just quit their job and go? You shouldn't have did that anyway. That don't make no sense. Oh, that was the enemy, like fighting all of these things, I'm telling you. But how many know if you really follow the Lord, sometimes he will lead you to a place, and even it talks about how Jesus, when his ministry was come, that he was led by the Holy Ghost into the wilderness. That's word, baby. That is word. So a lot of times we think that, oh, this ain't the unction of the Holy Ghost. This is the enemy. No, it's the Lord. But you about to go through your process, and you about to go through your wilderness. And when I tell you, this was the nuts and butts, nuts, I can't even say the word, you know what I'm saying? But the total circumference, the core, the meat of my wilderness, you know what I'm saying? So it was just like, Lord God, like, what are you trying to do to me? Are you trying to kill me? You know what I'm saying? And it was just like humiliation, being humbled, being angry, being frustrated, but then also having this deep sorrow of like, Lord, you let me down. Lord, why would you have me out here looking like this? Lord, you know what I'm saying? And I was always the type of person, and then my mom, she had to take on like kind of helping me out more. And I've always been one to put money in my mom's pocket, help my mom do certain things. I didn't want to be the one taken from her, you know what I'm saying? So that made me, and I'm very independent, you know what I'm saying? So I like to do for myself, and not in a arrogant way. I'm not going to say I never, walked in arrogance, but for the most part, I would say more independent. I don't like to depend on people for anything that I don't have to depend on them, because like I said, when you depend on people, you don't know what, you know what I'm saying? When your life is about, people not going to treat you like you treat you. And that was just period, right? So those were some of the things that I was dealing with. And then eventually, with my living arrangements, it got to a place where, I had to kind of move like every 7 days. And then after a while, I kind of got a little bit more stability, and I was able to stay in the space that I was at for like 2 months and some change. So then that helped. But then it was just a lot of different things too that took place. And then ultimately, again, I was with my dog. You know what I'm saying? I was trying to go to get him some bully sticks. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, let me go to the store. And I went to one place that didn't have it. And was already like at 2 different places. So I said, let me go to Walmart. Like, again, Walmart, right? So I ended up going to Walmart. And mind you, I'm in there and I just see somebody, pull up, you know what I'm saying, behind me. And I wasn't really thinking nothing of it because I said, well, I've been to like 4 stores. Let me get out and let me at least walk him in the parking lot before I go to Walmart to get his, I was trying to get him some shoes and stuff like that. I said he has to have that, you know what I'm saying? Because I have my dog is German Shepherd mixed with Belgian Malinois, you know what I'm saying? So he is like chewer, honey. He got to have his stuff, you know what I'm saying? So I was on my way to do that. And I walked him over, and they got my car on the daggone towing machine. I'm like, yo, hold up. So I'm like tripping, like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? And come to find out, my car was being repossessed. Like I said, I was already behind. I'm in a different state at this point. And again, calling, making arrangements, letting them know this, letting them know, look, I don't have it. I had made all the arrangements and payment arrangements and did all the necessary things that I needed to do to utilize their resources and then their hardship programs and all that stuff. Making them aware, being fully transparent and all that stuff. So pretty much this is part 5. And I'm telling you, this has been a journey, y'all. But your girl is still here. It let me see that I'm not wrapped up into apartments and places and things. I had to leave most of my stuff. You know what I'm saying? And even before then, God, within that duration of me being in my apartment 5 months, God had led me to go somewhere else, closer to the beach. I packed up my stuff and left, and I literally cried the day before because I'm like, Lord, are you telling me to leave? I didn't know if he had provisions there for me. When you are walking by faith and when you are believing the Lord, it can look on the outside looking in as you are a crazy nut. You are a crazy person. And mind you, you got to think about too where I'm coming from. I was recently, widowed, you know what I'm saying? During that time, it hadn't been a whole span. I think it was like a year or something. So people not sure if I lost my marbles, you know what I'm saying? People kind of like, you good? We want to help, but you good? You know what I'm saying? So it was one of those things. And I'm like, Lord, you got me out here looking literally like I'm crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm telling you, God has got me, and I'm still in, he still hasn't delivered me. I'm not in that wilderness. So things have definitely slowed down from there. I still do not have my vehicle and stuff like that. I don't have a place of my own, but I'm not homeless. You know what I'm saying? I'm homeless in the sense of I don't have my own space, but I'm not living on the ground, sleeping on the ground and stuff like that. So I'm grateful for that. And there's still lessons and things that I'm learning, within this process now, and still humbling, certain things that are humbling me as well in this process, and still things that I had to kind of like, just eat and deal with, But I am here to let you know that just because you go through things, just because things don't make sense, just because it doesn't make logical sense, even the word talks about if you try to find your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life, you will find it. And it's in Matthew 10 and Matthew 16. And it really it hit different when you are in a wilderness, when you are in a season with God and he's dealing with you, and you've heard scriptures and you heard pastors and preaching and sermons and teachings, but when you live out that word, it's a whole different thing. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I'm at. I'm living out the word. I'm in the word. Trying to make sure I got stuff around me. I don't be doing no bugs, y'all. These little birds and squirrels around here. But yeah, so it's just been one of those things. So it's just like, Lord God, you're crushing me, you're pressing me. Why would you allow me to go through all of this? So then I got to the place where, again, with the warfare, being exhausted, feeling, being attacked. And I had even got minds of, that I was underneath like attacks of witchcraft and all this stuff. I'm telling you, I've gotten so many. It's too much to put in one video. So I'm just trying to put it here. But when I tell you, God is still reigns supreme. He is still guys of guys and lords of lords and kings of kings. He is still got me here. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like I'm in this space of transitioning where I have not yet been to my promised land, but I'm no longer in that wilderness in the thickets like I was. You know what I'm saying? And when I tell you, he has let me know, how weak and strong I am. You know what I'm saying? How he uses pain and suffering in ways that doesn't logically make sense. But when you are on the potter's wheel, he know where to chisel you and carve you and cut you and put you back together again. And he know how to create what he put in you. because God know at the end of the day. And this is another thing I'm learning too. It's not so much, I think, I know what for me, it's like some things I legit felt like, yo, I just take me out of here because I can't do no more with this. I can't take this. I can't deal with this. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely, I have felt that several times in this journey. But there's also times when I feel like, yeah, I can make it. I know your word says I can do all things through Christ, but I don't want to do all things through Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like being 100, you know? So it's one of those things, you still see me smiling after all of this. Do I have my whip? Nope, I've been driving for I don't know how long. You know what I'm saying? That ain't my only first car that I had. It ain't gonna be, that's my first time ever getting a repossession out of all the years that I've been having a car. You know what I'm saying? I've never had a repossession. And it wasn't for a fault of my, like I said, I've been endured situations. There have been times I had to make, payment arrangements, not always been able to pay, but I've always had income coming in different sources or only one source. And I had income coming in flowing that I can, do what I needed to do to make the necessary arrangements to pay it. Never in one time of me having that, I've gotten so far behind. So, but like I said, but how many know when we lose things for God, we gain them? You know what I'm saying? So I'm a living testimony of that, and I'm just sharing my journey, sharing my wilderness experience, and hopefully that is going to be encouraging to you. But this ain't nothing made up, baby. This is something I live, real life, true stuff. You know what I'm saying? But to God be the glory.